They mocked the black janitor every single day, laughing behind his back, calling him names, and treating him like he didn't matter. But what they didn't know was that he wasn't just a janitor. He was the secret heir to the company, watching, listening, and waiting. And the moment he saw enough, he took everything from them. Careers, power, control, all gone in a single night. How did the man they looked down on bring an entire empire crashing to its knees? And why did no one see it coming? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. And if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Marcus stood at the back of the small chapel, his tall frame half hidden in shadow. The rain outside drummed against the stained glass windows, creating a somber rhythm that matched his heavy heart. Only a handful of people occupied the worn wooden pews, their shoulders hunched as if carrying the weight of the dreary afternoon. The closed casket at the front held Franklin Ellison, his father. Marcus hadn't spoken to him in 6 years. The polished wood gleamed under the dim lights, a stark contrast to the weathered walls of the chapel. A man in an expensive suit approached, his shoes clicking against the floor. "Such a shame about Frank," he said, extending his hand. "Tom Langston, from the firm. Were you a client of his?" Marcus shook the offered hand, noting the loose grip. "Just paying my respects," he said quietly. The irony wasn't lost on him. These people had worked alongside his father for decades, but had no idea they were speaking to Franklin Ellison's son. One by one, the partners from Gray, Langston, and Moore made their way to him, offering empty condolences. Their words felt rehearsed, their presence more obligation than grief. None of them knew the truth about Franklin Ellison's role in building their prestigious firm, or about the son he'd left behind. After the last hymn faded and the small crowd dispersed, Marcus found himself alone on a wooden bench near the chapel's entrance. The rain had softened to a gentle patter. He closed his eyes, remembering the last time he'd seen his father, a tense dinner 6 years ago, where unspoken words had filled the space between them like smoke. "You look just like him, you know." Marcus opened his eyes to find a well-dressed black woman standing before him. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her eyes held a warmth that seemed out of place on this cold day. "Ellen Ward," she said, though no introduction was needed. Marcus recognized her from the few times he'd visited his father's office as a teenager. "I was your father's attorney and friend." Marcus nodded, making space on the bench. "I remember you, Ms. Ward." She sat beside him, her movements precise and deliberate. From her leather briefcase, she withdrew a thick envelope sealed with wax. "Your father wanted you to have this. His eyes only. He was very clear about that." Marcus took the envelope, feeling its weight. "Did he tell you what's in it?" "I helped him prepare it," Ellen said, her voice low. "He wasn't the man you thought he was, Marcus. He wasn't the man any of them thought he was either." She glanced toward the chapel doors where the last of the partners were leaving. "Open it when you're alone, really alone." Marcus slipped the envelope into his jacket pocket. Why didn't he ever stand up for himself? For what was right? Ellen's eyes softened. "Sometimes the longest fights are the quiet ones. Your father was playing a very long game." She stood, straightening her skirt. "Read it carefully, Marcus. Every word." Later that evening, in the privacy of his apartment, Marcus broke the seal. Inside, he found several documents, but one caught his eye immediately. Clause 9B. As he read through the dense legal text, his hands began to shake. Ownership rights, voting shares, evidence of systematic discrimination, carefully documented over decades. His father had left him more than an inheritance. He'd left him the power to change everything. Mixed in with the legal papers were internal memos, email printouts, and handwritten notes spanning 30 years. Each piece told part of a story of quiet resistance, of careful documentation, of a man who saw everything but chose to wait for the right moment. Marcus walked to his window, looking out at the city lights blurring in the rain. He grabbed his coat and headed out into the night, needing to clear his head. The streets of his old neighborhood hadn't changed much. The same cracked sidewalks, the same corner store where his mother used to buy him candy after school. He could almost see her now, proud in her office clothes, heading to her job as a receptionist at Gray, Langston, and Moore. She never complained, but he remembered the tight lines around her mouth when she came home, the way she held herself so carefully straight. "Keep your head up," she used to tell him. "No matter what they say or do, keep your head up." The memories came faster now, watching his mother endure subtle slights and not-so-subtle dismissals. The way the partners would talk over her, around her, through her. The same partners who'd barely acknowledged her son at his father's funeral today. Marcus's feet carried him downtown, through the thinning rain, until he stood before the towering glass and steel structure of Gray, Langston, and Moore, LLP. The building reached into the night sky like a monument to power and privilege. Water trickled down its dark windows, and Marcus could see his reflection, distorted but determined. "Time to clean up," he whispered to himself, his words carried away by the night wind. The papers in his pocket felt heavy with possibility. His father had given him the tools to expose decades of discrimination, to prove what everyone knew but no one could say. But more than that, he'd given him the power to make real change. If he was smart enough, brave enough, patient enough to use it right. 1 week after the funeral, Marcus adjusted the navy blue collar of his janitor's uniform, the scratchy fabric a far cry from his usual tailored suits. The name patch read Mark Ellis, close enough to his real name to feel natural, different enough to maintain his cover. He stood at the service entrance of Gray, Langston, and Moore LLP, watching streams of well-dressed professionals hurrying out into the evening. The maintenance office was tucked away in the basement, a cramped space with fluorescent lights that buzzed overhead. Marcus checked his watch, 6 p.m. exactly, and pressed his thumb against the ancient time clock. The machine whirred and clicked, stamping his time card with mechanical precision. "You must be the new guy." A voice came from behind him, warm and accented. Marcus turned to find an older Latino man with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes watching him. His uniform was identical to Marcus's, though worn with the comfort of long use. The name patch read Caesar. "Mark Ellis," Marcus said, extending his hand, "starting tonight." Caesar's handshake was firm and calloused. "Cesar Delgado, 23 years in this building." He grabbed a ring of keys from a hook on the wall. "Come on, I'll show you around before we start. Ellen said you need the full tour." Marcus followed Caesar through the building's arteries, service corridors and back stairwells that ran parallel to the polished public spaces. The older man moved with the ease of someone who knew every corner, every shortcut. "Main thing to remember," Caesar said as they emerged onto the ground floor, "is timing. Partners usually clear out by 6, associates by 7. Some stay late, especially near the end of the quarter. Best to work around them, not with them." They passed through the marble lobby, their rubber-soled shoes squeaking against the floor. The security guard barely glanced up from his crossword puzzle. Marcus studied the brass plaques on the wall, a timeline of the firm's history that conspicuously omitted his father's name. As they climbed to the higher floors, Caesar's voice grew quieter. "Keep your head down up here. They don't treat us like people in these halls." He gestured to the glass-walled offices with their mahogany furniture and city views. "To them, we're just shadows that empty their trash." Marcus nodded, his jaw tightening as he read the names etched on the office doors. Langston, Gray, Moore, sons and grandsons of the original partners, their positions secured by birth rather than merit. The carpet grew thicker, the art more expensive with each floor they climbed. They were passing through a corridor of associate offices when 2 young lawyers emerged, engrossed in conversation. Their designer suits probably cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. Did you see Peterson's face when that pro bono client couldn't understand the settlement terms? One laughed, adjusting his tie. Classic. Bet these janitors can't even read the legal notices we post, the other replied. His eyes landed on Marcus, who was wiping down a glass wall. Hey boy, you missed a spot. The lawyer tossed his empty coffee cup onto the freshly cleaned floor, the remaining drops spattering across the carpet. Both men chuckled as they walked away. Caesar moved to pick up the cup, but Marcus got there first. Let me, he said quietly, his fingers closing around the paper cup. He could feel Caesar watching him, reading his reaction. You get used to it, Caesar said, though his eyes suggested he never really had. They finished the tour in the executive suite on the top floor. The boardroom doors were solid oak, the handles polished brass. Inside, the long table gleamed under recessed lighting, and floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. They had their monthly partners meeting this afternoon, Caesar said, wrinkling his nose at the lingering smell of expensive bourbon. Always leave it a mess. Marcus began cleaning methodically, his movements deliberate as he worked his way around the room. Empty glasses lined the table, some still containing amber dregs. He collected them carefully, noting lipstick marks and fingerprints. When Caesar stepped out to grab more supplies, Marcus moved quickly. From his pocket, he withdrew a small camera, no bigger than a button. The decorative plant in the corner, a large peace lily in an ornate pot, provided perfect coverage of the entire room. With practiced hands, he secured the device among the leaves, adjusting it until the angle was just right. He was just finishing when Caesar returned. Almost done? The older man asked. Just about, Marcus replied, giving the table one final wipe. They locked the boardroom behind them, the key turning with a heavy click. As they gathered their cleaning supplies, Marcus's eyes caught on a familiar face in the dim hallway. The portrait was dusty, pushed into a corner as if forgotten. Franklin Ellison's dark eyes stared out from the canvas, his expression serious, but with a hint of something else. Patience, perhaps, or determination. Cesar followed his gaze. That's Mr. Ellison. Been here longer than me, that picture. Used to be in the lobby, then the conference room. Now ... He shrugged. Things change, not always for the better. Marcus studied his father's portrait for a moment longer, noting how the shadows seemed to gather around its frame. No, he said softly. Not always. But sometimes they can change back. The next evening, Marcus arrived at the firm 45 minutes before his shift. He nodded to the night security guard, who barely looked up from his magazine, and made his way to the third-floor supply closet. The one Caesar had shown him was rarely used. The space was tight, cramped with shelves of cleaning supplies and paper products, but it served his purpose. Marcus settled onto an overturned bucket, positioning himself between two tall shelving units. The burner laptop's screen cast a pale blue glow in the dim space as he connected to the building's guest Wi-Fi through a secure VPN. His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, accessing the encrypted feed from the boardroom camera. The video quality was crystal clear, capturing every detail of the previous day's activity. He fast-forwarded through hours of empty room footage until voices filled his earbuds. Two senior partners, Richard Gray Jr. and Thomas Moore III, lounged in leather chairs, sharing what appeared to be expensive whiskey. Speaking of promotions, Gray said, swirling his drink. Did you see Tamika's application for senior paralegal? Moore chuckled, the sound thick with condescension. Oh yes, quite the ambitious one. A bit too... what's the word I'm looking for? Sassy? Gray supplied, smirking. Not quite the brand we're cultivating here. Exactly. Moore took a long sip. Can't have that energy in client meetings. Better to keep her where she is. Marcus's jaw clenched as he documented the exchange, noting timestamps and exact quotes. This was just the beginning. Over the next several nights, Marcus developed a routine. He would arrive early, review footage, then spend his shift strategically placing more cameras in key locations, conference rooms, partner offices, and common areas. The evidence accumulated quickly. In a fourth-floor conference room, he captured Reggie Thompson, a junior associate, giving a case presentation to the litigation team. Reggie was brilliant, Marcus knew from his research. Top of his class at Howard Law, with an impressive track record in pro bono cases. Could you perhaps? Partner Sarah Langston interrupted Reggie's presentation, her voice dripping with false concern. Adjust your delivery? The urban dialect might make some clients uncomfortable. Reggie's face remained professional, but Marcus could see his hands tighten on the podium. I'm not sure I understand, Ms. Langston. My presentation style is dash. Just try to sound more, she gestured vaguely, professional. The other partners nodded in agreement, none meeting Reggie's eyes. Marcus documented it all, building a spreadsheet of incidents, patterns, and participants. The evidence mounted, emails forwarded to his secure account, showed partners openly mocking diversity initiatives. In one thread, William Gray III joked about using minority hires as tax write-offs. Another partner responded with a laughing emoji. During a client meeting in the corner office, Marcus pretended to dust, while the camera in his uniform button recorded everything. The client, a CEO of a tech company, frowned at the young black attorney assigned to his account. Nothing personal, the client said to partner James Moore. But is there perhaps a different attorney available? Someone more traditional? Moore's response was immediate, practiced. Of course, Mr. Stevens. I'll have David Hansen take over the account. He's one of our most experienced associates. The young attorney's face remained carefully blank as she gathered her files and left the room. Marcus added another entry to his growing database. Each night, he organized the evidence meticulously. Names, dates, timestamps. Everything categorized and cross-referenced. He created backup copies on encrypted drives, storing them in different locations. The legal framework for a discrimination case was building, piece by damning piece. On his 10th night, while emptying trash bins in the partner's private lounge, Marcus heard voices approaching. He stepped behind a tall plant, blending into the shadows, a skill he'd perfected over the past week. Ava Richmond entered first, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floor. Behind her came Jasmine Taylor, a third-year associate Marcus had been watching. Both women looked tired, their professional facades showing cracks after a long day. I just don't understand, Jasmine said, sinking into one of the leather chairs. My billables are higher than Peterson's, my client feedback is excellent, and I've brought in 2 new accounts this quarter. Ava perched on the arm of an adjacent chair, her expression sympathetic but resigned. Listen, I've been here longer than you. Want some free advice? Jasmine nodded, leaning forward. You'll never make partner here unless you're 10 times better than the worst of them, Ava said, her voice barely above a whisper. And even then, don't hold your breath. Marcus watched them silently from his hiding spot, particularly intrigued by Ava. He'd researched her thoroughly. Top of her class, impressive case record, known for her strategic networking. She played the game well, but her words to Jasmine suggested she knew exactly how rigged that game was. Jasmine's shoulders slumped. So what am I supposed to do? Play the long game, Ava replied, standing to pour herself water from the crystal decanter. Document everything. Build your client base. Make yourself too valuable to ignore. She paused, taking a careful sip. Or do what I do. Smile, nod, and keep your real thoughts to yourself. Marcus remained motionless in his corner, absorbing every word. The conversation confirmed what his evidence showed, a system of subtle barriers and unspoken rules designed to maintain the status quo while maintaining plausible deniability. Over the next few weeks, Marcus noticed Ava's late-night work pattern. She was usually the last associate to leave, often staying well past 9, her office light a lone beacon in the darkened hallway. He began timing his cleaning rounds to coincide with her schedule. One evening, as he emptied her trash bin, he noticed her rubbing her temples, staring at a stack of briefs. "Rough night?" he asked, keeping his tone casual. She glanced up, surprised. Most of the cleaning staff rarely spoke to the lawyers. "Just another Tuesday," she replied with a tired smile. "Looks like you could use some coffee," Marcus said. "I'm heading to the break room anyway." Ava hesitated, then nodded. "That would be amazing, actually. Thank you." "Mark," he supplied. "Black with 1 sugar, right?" "I've noticed." She smiled, genuinely this time. Good observation skills. When he returned with her coffee, she was on the phone, her voice clipped and professional. He set the cup down quietly and turned to leave. "Wait," she called after finishing her call. "Thank you, Mark. You didn't have to do that." He shrugged. "No problem. Seems like important work you're doing." "Something about the Martinez case?" Ava's eyebrows rose slightly. "You know about Martinez?" "I clean the conference rooms," he said with a modest smile. "Hard not to pick up a few things. Class action against that pharmaceutical company, right? Pretty complex RICO allegations." She studied him with new interest. "That's impressive. Most people wouldn't understand the implications just from overhearing." "I read a lot," Marcus said simply. "Law interests me. Plus, you left some briefs out last week. Hope you don't mind that I glanced through them while dusting." Over the next few nights, their interactions grew longer. Marcus would bring her coffee, and they'd chat briefly about cases or law school. He noticed how she lit up when talking about her time at Harvard Law, where she'd been editor of the Law Review. "Must have been tough," he commented one evening, carefully wiping down her desk. Being one of the few black students there, Ava's smile tightened slightly. "You learn to adapt, to speak their language, play their game." "Seems like you're still playing it," he observed quietly. She looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "Just that, well, I've been here a month, and I've seen how hard you work. Harder than most of the partners, honestly." Ava's professional mask slipped for a moment. She leaned back in her chair, exhaustion evident in her posture. "You notice a lot, don't you, Mark?" "It's easy to see things when people think you're invisible," he replied. She was quiet for a long moment. "You know what's funny? I made partner track faster than anyone in my class. My billables are through the roof. I've brought in more new clients this year than any other senior associate." Her voice took on a bitter edge. "And guess who just got the junior partner position I was promised?" Marcus waited, though he already knew the answer. "Trevor Langston Jr.," she said, practically spitting the name. "Barely passed the bar on his 3rd try, but Daddy's name is on the letterhead, so..." She caught herself, straightening up. "I shouldn't be talking about this." "It's not right," Marcus said softly. Ava's laugh was sharp, humorless. "Right has nothing to do with it. This is how the game is played." She began gathering her files, clearly done with the conversation. "Things will change. Eventually. They have to." Marcus nodded and left with his cleaning cart, but he didn't go far. He'd noticed a pattern. Ava often took late-night calls in the Western conference room, away from the main offices. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, he heard voices from that direction. Through the hidden camera he'd installed weeks ago, Marcus watched as Ava paced the conference room, phone to her ear. Her colleague Jessica, another senior associate, was on speakerphone. "I can't believe they gave it to Trevor," Jessica was saying. "Everyone knows you deserved that promotion." "Please," Ava scoffed. "They were never going to give it to me. Not really. They'll string me along with promises, but they'll never let someone like me sit at that table." She paused, her voice dropping lower. Unless what?" "Well, Trevor's been pretty friendly lately," Ava said, a calculated note in her voice. "Very friendly. And he is single. Jessica caught on immediately. Ava, are you saying? I'm saying they'll never let me earn my way to that table, Ava replied coolly. But if I play nice, maybe I can marry into it. Trevor's not exactly subtle about his interest. But he's such a… Jessica struggled for words. An entitled racist man-child? Ava finished. Oh, I know. But he's an entitled racist man-child whose family owns 40% of the firm. Sometimes you have to compromise to get what you want. I thought you wanted to change things, Jessica said quietly. Change comes from the inside, Ava replied, and I'm tired of waiting at the door. Later that night, in the familiar confines of the supply closet, Marcus reviewed the recording again. He'd created a special folder for Ava's conversations, separate from his main evidence files. The video was paused on her face, perfectly composed, even in private, but her eyes held a calculating determination that troubled him. He thought about their conversations, how easily she'd opened up to him. Had she really warmed to him, or had she simply seen another piece to play in her game? The janitor who noticed too much, who knew too much about law. Was he just another potential ally or weapon in her arsenal? Marcus stared at her frozen image on the screen. I hope you're not what I think you are, he whispered. But he had a sinking feeling he knew exactly what she was. Someone who'd decided that if she couldn't beat the system, she'd join it, no matter the cost to her integrity or others. With a heavy sigh, he added the new audio file to his growing collection of evidence. He labeled it carefully. Richmond, A. Strategic Compromise. The timestamp blinked steadily in the corner of the screen, another piece in the puzzle he was building, though he wasn't yet sure where this particular piece would fit. The next evening, Marcus arrived at the firm 30 minutes before his shift. He settled into his usual spot, a cramped supply closet on the third floor that smelled of bleach and paper towels. The hum of the vending machine next door provided perfect cover for any sounds from his laptop. He sipped his lukewarm coffee, grimacing at the metallic taste of the vending machine brew, and began reviewing the previous night's recordings. The hidden cameras had captured the usual parade of microaggressions and casual discrimination, but something new caught his eye. An email thread with the subject line, Minority Mentorship Pipeline Update, Q3. Marcus leaned forward, his interest piqued. He'd heard whispers about this program from some of the staff, but hadn't seen any concrete evidence of its operations. Opening the email chain, he found a series of messages between HR Director Patricia Mills and several senior partners. Our diversity numbers are looking great for the annual report, one email read. The pipeline program gives us excellent PR coverage. The Times is doing a feature next month on law firm inclusion initiatives. Another reply from Patricia detailed the program's success metrics. 20 minority law students placed in 3-month internships, glossy photos of supposed mentoring sessions, and testimonials that Marcus suspected were heavily edited or entirely fabricated. He dug deeper into the firm's internal servers, his fingers flying over the keyboard. The official program materials painted a picture of dedicated mentorship, valuable experience, and a clear path to future employment. The reality, buried in scheduling logs and assignment records, told a very different story. Marcus checked his watch, still 40 minutes before his shift. He grabbed his cleaning cart and headed to the 4th floor, where the summer interns were stationed. He'd noticed one young black intern who usually worked late, and tonight was no exception. Isaiah Thompson sat alone in the intern bullpen, surrounded by towers of documents. His tie was loosened, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. He looked up as Marcus entered with his cart. Evening, Marcus said casually, beginning to empty the trash bins. Burning the midnight oil? Isaiah managed a tired smile. Always. These documents won't scan themselves. Marcus nodded sympathetically. Must be interesting work, though, being part of that mentorship program, learning from the partners and all that. The young man's face darkened slightly. Yeah, Real interesting. You know how many times I've actually met with my supposed mentor? 0. Not once in 2 months. Marcus paused in his cleaning, sensing an opening. For real? I thought this was some big deal program. They've got all these posters up about it. Isaiah glanced around, then lowered his voice. Can I be honest with you? I mean, you seem like one of the good ones who gets it. Always, Marcus replied, pulling up a chair and sitting down. Sometimes the best way to disappear was to be completely visible. This whole thing is a joke, Isaiah said, frustration evident in his voice. They parade us around for photos, stick us in the back room, and have us doing work the paralegals won't even touch. I haven't written a single memo, haven't sat in on any real meetings, just scanning, copying, and fetching coffee. Marcus shook his head. That's rough, man. What about the other interns in the program? Same story. Jamal quit last week. Maria's thinking about it too. Isaiah ran a hand over his face. I had such high hopes, you know. Top of my class at Georgetown Law, thought this was my big break, but I'm starting to think I should just drop out. Try somewhere else. You've got the records of your assignments, Marcus asked carefully. Might be good to document everything, just in case. Isaiah nodded. Yeah, I've been keeping track. Fat lot of good it'll do, though. Who's going to believe an intern over a major law firm? Marcus made a show of checking his watch. Hey, I better get back to my rounds. But listen, don't give up just yet. Sometimes things have a way of working out. After finishing his conversation with Isaiah, Marcus headed to the HR department. At this hour, it was deserted. He used his master key to enter Patricia Mills' office and quickly accessed her computer. Years of working in corporate environments had taught him that most people use the same password patterns. In Patricia's case, her dog's name, plus her birth year. The HR files confirmed everything Isaiah had said. Marcus downloaded scheduling logs showing that none of the minority interns had ever had official meetings with their assigned mentors. He found evaluation forms filled with vague, generic comments, clearly copied and pasted from template files. The program's budget revealed minimal spending on actual mentorship activities, with most funds allocated to marketing and PR materials. Most damning were the internal metrics tracking what happened to program participants after their internships. Of the 100+ minority interns over the past 5 years, not a single one had been offered a permanent position. Meanwhile, the children of clients and partners regularly transitioned from summer associates to full-time attorneys. Marcus printed everything, carefully covering his digital tracks as he closed down the computer. He gathered the stack of papers, along with Isaiah's written statement about his experience, which he'd quietly recorded during their conversation. The law library annex was on the 6th floor, a dusty relic from before everything went digital. Books lined the walls, their spines faded and untouched. Marcus had discovered this forgotten space during his first week and immediately recognized its potential as a secure storage location. He selected a thick volume on corporate tax law, the kind of book nobody would ever pull from the shelf, and carefully hollowed out a space inside. The documents fit perfectly. Marcus replaced the book on the shelf, positioning it exactly as it had been. One more brick in the wall, he whispered, his voice barely audible in the silent room. The evidence was mounting, piece by piece. The mentorship program was just another example of the firm's systemic discrimination, hidden behind a veneer of progressive policies and diversity initiatives. Marcus thought about Isaiah, about all the bright young lawyers whose dreams were being quietly suffocated in back rooms and basement offices. 2 days later, the fluorescent lights of Mike's all-night diner cast a harsh glow over the cracked vinyl booths. Marcus sat across from Ava, watching her stir her third cocktail with a plastic straw. The place was mostly empty, save for a couple of truckers at the counter and an elderly couple sharing pie near the window. "You're always such a good listener, Mark," Ava said, her words slightly slurred. She'd insisted on ordering drinks with their burgers, claiming she needed to take the edge off after a particularly rough day at the firm. That's why I wanted to thank you properly, not just quick chats while you're cleaning. Marcus maintained his carefully crafted persona, gentle, unassuming, with just enough intelligence to be interesting but not threatening. It's nothing. Sometimes people just need someone to hear them out. No, it's more than that. Ava leaned forward, her designer blazer creasing slightly. You get it somehow. Even though you're not. She caught herself, taking another sip instead of finishing the thought. Not a lawyer? Marcus offered mildly. Right. Ava nodded, then lowered her voice conspiratorially. You know what I heard today? In the partners' lounge? She didn't wait for his response. They're planning to phase out the entire diversity initiative by next quarter. Budget cuts, they're saying. But I heard Gray telling Moore it's because the experiment failed. She made air quotes with her fingers. Marcus felt his jaw tighten but kept his expression neutral. That must be tough to hear. Oh, but that's not even the worst part. Ava's drink was nearly empty now. They're going to blame it on lack of qualified candidates. Can you believe that? As if we haven't been killing ourselves trying to prove we belong there. Marcus watched her carefully, noting how she said "we," despite her earlier hesitation to associate herself with him. Sounds like a lot of closed-door conversations happening lately. Well? Ava's expression shifted, a hint of pride crossing her features. Trevor. Mr. Langston Jr. He's been keeping me in the loop. Actually, ... She glanced around the diner before continuing. He mentioned something about making me partner soon. Really? Marcus kept his tone carefully curious. That's quite a jump from where you were last week. Things change fast in this business. Ava straightened up, some of the tipsiness seeming to fade. Trevor sees my potential. He knows I understand how things work. And you think he sees you as an equal? Marcus asked softly. Have you wondered why he chose you specifically? The change in Ava's demeanor was immediate. Her shoulders stiffened and her eyes narrowed slightly. Don't act like you know what it's like, she said, her voice taking on an edge he hadn't heard before. You're just the janitor. The words hung in the air between them. Ava's eyes widened slightly as she realized what she'd said. Sorry, she added quickly, reaching across the table as if to touch his hand but stopping short. That was uncalled for. I've had too much to drink. No offense taken, Marcus replied, though he noted how quickly she'd revealed her true colors when challenged. Maybe we should get you back to your car. The walk back to the firm's parking garage was quiet, filled with Ava's occasional attempts at apologetic small talk. Marcus played along, maintaining his role while his mind cataloged every detail of their conversation. The garage was nearly empty at this hour, their footsteps echoing off concrete walls. Ava led them toward the executive section, marked with clear, reserved signs. Marcus noticed immediately. A sleek black BMW M5 parked in a spot marked Executive Partners Only. Trevor Langston Jr.'s car. Ava pulled out a key fob, and the BMW's lights flashed in response. She didn't offer any explanation for driving Langston's car, nor did she seem to notice Marcus's continued presence as she slipped into the driver's seat with practiced familiarity. Marcus waited until the BMW's taillights disappeared around the corner before heading to his usual supply closet. He pulled out his laptop and began cross-referencing footage from the past few weeks with Ava's revelations from dinner. The pattern emerged quickly. Footage showed Ava entering Langston's office late at night, long after most staff had left. But they weren't working. They were talking about him. About Mark Ellis. The new janitor asks a lot of questions. Ava's voice came through clearly in one recording from 3 days ago. He seems especially interested in the minority programs. Keep an eye on him, Langston Jr.'s voice replied. Could be a union plant. Or worse, some kind of undercover reporter. Another clip from last week. Ava describing Marcus's cleaning schedule to Langston, noting which areas he seemed to linger in longer than others. The evidence was undeniable. While Marcus had been evaluating Ava as a potential ally, she had been doing the same to him, but for the other side. She'd been feeding information to Langston Jr. all along, probably hoping to prove her loyalty and secure her position in the firm's hierarchy. Marcus stared at the laptop screen, his breathing becoming heavy and controlled. The betrayal wasn't entirely unexpected, but it still stung. He had given her chances to prove herself different, to show that she understood the larger fight. Instead, she had chosen to be a weapon for the very system she claimed to resent. "I gave you a chance," he whispered to the frozen image of Ava on his screen, her smile now seeming more calculated than warm. The next evening, Marcus arrived at the law firm carrying his usual cleaning supplies, plus a small toolbox he'd borrowed from maintenance. The executive conference room's lighting had been flickering for days, a perfect excuse for some unscheduled maintenance work. He nodded to the security guard at the front desk, who barely glanced up from his newspaper. After 6 weeks of quiet, reliable work, Marcus had become practically invisible to the building's regular staff. Just another face in a uniform, exactly as he'd planned. The executive conference room was empty when he entered, its long mahogany table gleaming under the supposedly faulty lights. Marcus set up his ladder beneath one of the fixtures, carefully removing the plastic cover. With practiced movements, he installed 3 tiny high-resolution microphones, each no larger than a shirt button, positioning them strategically around the room's perimeter. As he worked, voices drifted down the hallway. Marcus recognized Langston Jr.'s distinctive laugh, loud, performative, trying too hard to sound casual. The partner meeting was starting early. Marcus quickly replaced the light cover and grabbed his mop, moving to the hallway just as the partners rounded the corner. He kept his head down, pushing the mop in slow, methodical strokes. "Evening," Langston Jr. said as he passed, not really looking at Marcus. 2 other partners, Richard Moore and James Peterson, followed him into the conference room. Marcus continued mopping, positioning himself near the partially open door. The new microphones picked up every word with crystal clarity through his earpiece. "So, Trevor," Moore's voice came through first. "About this union whispers we've been hearing. Should we be concerned?" "Please," Langston Jr. scoffed. "I've got it handled. That's what Ava's for, my insurance policy." There was a pause, followed by the sound of ice clinking in glasses. Someone was pouring drinks. "Is she still reporting on the janitor guy?" Peterson asked, his tone carrying a hint of worry. Langston's laugh echoed through the room. "Yeah, told her he's some kind of agitator. She bought it hook, line, and sinker." The sound of him settling into a leather chair. "You should see how eager she is to prove herself useful. A little attention, a few promises, and she's practically falling over herself to spy for us." "What if he's more than that?" Peterson pressed. "These maintenance workers, they see everything. They hear everything." "He's a mop with a mouth," Langston dismissed. "Relax, have a drink. Besides, even if he was something more, which he's not, we've got Ava watching his every move. She's desperate enough to make partner that she'd probably report her own mother if I asked her to." Marcus continued mopping, his movements steady despite the anger building in his chest. He'd suspected Langston was using Ava, but hearing it stated so baldly, so dismissively, confirmed everything. After finishing the hallway, Marcus made his way to the HR department. Most of the staff had left for the day, leaving only the night cleaning crew and a few workaholics scattered throughout the building. From his jacket pocket, Marcus removed a carefully prepared document. He'd spent hours crafting it, a mock inquiry into potential union organization activities, complete with official-looking letterhead and just enough specific details to seem legitimate without being traceable. He placed the document on the edge of the HR coordinator's desk, partially obscured by other papers, but visible enough to catch attention. The label, Union Lawsuit Inquiry, stood out in bold letters along the top. The trap was set, now to wait. Marcus didn't have to wait long. The next morning, he arrived early and checked his surveillance systems. Within hours of the document being placed, the cameras caught Ava entering the HR department well before normal business hours. She photographed the document with her phone, her hands shaking slightly with excitement. 20 minutes later, an email notification popped up on Marcus's screen. He'd managed to access the firm's internal email system weeks ago, and now it proved invaluable. Ava had sent a message to Langston Jr.'s private email account. Trevor, found something concerning in HR. Appears to be an inquiry into union activities. The timing seems suspicious given our conversation about the new maintenance staff. Document attached. Langston's reply came quickly. Good girl, keep this between us for now. Delete this email chain. Dinner tonight? Marcus switched to the hallway audio feed just in time to catch their in-person conversation. The click of Ava's heels announced her arrival at Langston's office. This is exactly what I was talking about, Ava's voice came through clearly. He must be involved somehow. The timing's too perfect. You've done well bringing this to me, Langston replied, his tone patronizing. Keep watching him. Report anything suspicious. Of course, Ava said eagerly. Whatever you need. Marcus sat back in his chair, letting the recordings continue to run. He now had irrefutable evidence, not just of Ava's willingness to betray a supposed friend, but of the partner's manipulation of her ambition. The email chain, the recorded conversations, the security footage, it all painted a clear picture of institutional corruption and personal betrayal. He pulled out his own recorder, the one he used for personal notes and documentation. Pressing the record button, he spoke quietly but clearly. Now, I bury them both. Marcus sat alone in the dimly lit copy room on Friday evening, the steady hum of the printer providing cover for his activities. The law firm's halls were empty except for the occasional shuffle of the cleaning crew. He'd deliberately chosen this timing. Most employees had already left for the weekend, leaving him free to execute the next phase of his plan. The printer whirred to life, producing 3 distinct sets of documents. Each stack contained carefully selected evidence, racist email chains between partners, screenshots of manipulated performance evaluations, and transcripts of discriminatory conversations. Marcus had meticulously redacted different portions of each set, creating the illusion that they came from different sources. He reviewed each packet, ensuring the redactions told exactly the story he wanted. The first set, destined for Ava's mailbox, heavily implied that Langston Jr. was preparing to throw her under the bus. The second, for Langston Jr., suggested that someone in HR was building a case against him. The third, for the HR head, hinted at both Ava and Langston Jr. leaking sensitive information. Marcus moved silently through the corridors, his janitor's uniform allowing him to blend into the background. He placed each packet in its respective internal mailbox, knowing they would be discovered first thing Monday morning. The seeds of doubt were planted. By Monday afternoon, the tension in the office was palpable. Marcus observed from his usual cleaning rounds as HR Director Patricia Morrison stormed into her office, clutching the manila envelope he'd left. Her face had gone pale as she'd read through the contents. Within hours, the surveillance cameras Marcus had installed captured a flurry of activity. Patricia called Langston Jr. into a closed-door meeting. Marcus watched the feed from a supply room monitor, adjusting the audio to catch every word. Trevor, this is serious. Patricia's voice came through clearly. These documents suggest multiple breaches of confidentiality, and some of these conversations, if they got out. Langston Jr. paced the office, his usual swagger replaced by nervous energy. Who else has seen these? I don't know, but someone's clearly gathering evidence. Marcus switched camera feeds, catching Langston Jr. storming toward Ava's office immediately after the meeting. She was at her desk, already looking unsettled by her own packet of documents. What did you do? Langston Jr. demanded, closing her office door hard enough to rattle the glass. What? I didn't... Don't lie to me. He slammed his hand on her desk. These documents. Someone's been collecting information. Have you been talking? Ava's composure cracked. I was just doing what you told me to. Her voice rose with panic. Everything I did was for you, Trevor. I reported on the janitor like you asked. I kept quiet about the discrimination. I played my part. Lower your voice, Langston Jr. hissed. Listen carefully. If any of this gets out, if I find out you've been playing both sides, I'll make sure you never work in law again. You'll be blacklisted from every firm in the city. Understand? Ava's face crumpled, but she nodded. Marcus continued his regular cleaning duties, watching the chaos unfold throughout the day. Partners held whispered conversations in corners. HR staff huddled in their break room, speaking in hushed tones. Ava remained in her office, barely moving, staring at her computer screen. That evening, as Marcus wheeled his cleaning cart toward the parking garage, he heard muffled sobs. Ava sat on a concrete barrier, her usually perfect makeup streaked with tears, her designer blazer rumpled. She looked up as his footsteps echoed in the garage. "Mark," she said, quickly trying to wipe her eyes. I can explain." Marcus stopped, regarding her silently. "You don't understand what it's like," she continued, her words tumbling out. "Being the only black woman in those rooms, always having to prove yourself, always being watched. I did what I had to do to survive, to get ahead. By betraying other black people," Marcus's voice was cold, controlled. "By helping them maintain their system of discrimination. I had to play their game. What choice did I have?" "There's always a choice, Ava. You chose their table." Her face fell as the words hit home. Marcus turned and walked away, leaving her alone in the dim garage. Her sobs echoed behind him, but he didn't look back. Later that night, after most of the building had cleared out, Marcus sat in his usual supply closet workspace. He methodically transferred the week's collected evidence onto an external hard drive: emails, audio recordings, video feeds, and photographs. Each file was carefully labeled and categorized, building an airtight case of discrimination and corruption. He checked his watch. Ellen Ward's law office was just a few blocks away, and she always worked late on Mondays. Marcus packed up his equipment and made his way through the quiet streets. Ellen's office was on the top floor of a modest building, nothing like the gleaming tower of Gray, Langston, and Moore. She looked up from her desk as he entered, her reading glasses perched on her nose. "Everything ready?" she asked, opening her safe. Marcus handed her the hard drive. "All the evidence is there, organized and backed up." Ellen placed the drive in a lockbox, then secured it in the safe. "Your father would be proud, Marcus. He always knew this day would come." Marcus nodded, then reached into his bag for one final item: an envelope labeled Stage 2, Legal Trigger, Internal Use Only. The date, written in his father's familiar handwriting, was exactly 2 weeks away, coinciding with the firm's annual Partners Gala. He held the envelope for a moment, feeling its weight. Everything he'd done so far had led to this moment. The real battle was about to begin. The Monday evening air felt heavy with tension as Marcus badged into the building for his night shift. The usual quiet efficiency of the law firm had been replaced by an atmosphere of nervous whispers and darting glances. He pushed his cleaning cart past clusters of associates who barely registered his presence, their conversations dropping to hushed tones as he passed. Near the water cooler, 2 white associates in expensive suits leaned close together, their voices carrying just enough for Marcus to catch fragments of their discussion. "Someone's definitely leaking internal docs," the taller one said, adjusting his tie. "HR is in full damage control mode." His companion shook his head. "Partners are calling it a snitch hunt. They want names by the end of the week." Marcus kept his face neutral as he changed the paper towels in the nearby bathroom, his movements practiced and unremarkable. Through the thin walls, he could hear more conversations, all centered around the mysterious document leak. The fear was spreading exactly as he'd planned. In the main office area, the usual bustle of legal work had been replaced by an undercurrent of paranoia. Partners were closing their doors for meetings that used to happen in the open. Support staff spoke in whispers, afraid of being overheard. Marcus noticed several people deleting emails at their computers, their faces tense with worry. The changes in Ava's status were immediate and brutal. As Marcus made his evening rounds, he observed her sitting alone in her office, no longer included in the strategy sessions that used to run late into the night. The stack of case files on her desk had shrunk considerably. Her phone barely rang. Through his carefully placed surveillance equipment, Marcus monitored the systematic dismantling of Ava's position at the firm. HR had begun accessing her email records and phone logs, marking them with red flags in the system. Her security clearance for certain floors had been quietly revoked. Even her parking spot had been reassigned to a more junior associate. Around 8 o'clock, Marcus watched through his vent camera as Ava finally broke. She stormed into Langston Jr.'s office without knocking, her usually composed demeanor cracking under the pressure. "What are you doing to me?" she demanded, her voice trembling with anger and fear. Langston Jr. barely looked up from his computer. "I'm working, Ava, unlike some people around here. Don't play games with me, Trevor. My cases are being reassigned. HR is monitoring my communications. You won't even look at me in meetings anymore." "Sounds like you're having a rough week." His tone was dismissive, cruel. "After everything I did for you?" Ava's voice rose. "I kept your secrets. I played your game. I believed you when you said we were building something together." Finally, Langston Jr. turned to face her, his expression cold. "Let me explain something to you, Ava. You're convenient until you're a liability. That's how this works. That's how it's always worked." The sharp crack of Ava's hand across his face echoed through the office. Langston Jr. touched his cheek, his eyes darkening with anger. Without a word, he pressed his desk phone. "Security to the executive floor," he said calmly. "We have a situation." Marcus watched through multiple camera feeds as 2 security guards escorted Ava from the building. Her head was held high, but tears streamed down her face. Her heels clicked against the marble floor for the last time as she walked through the lobby, carrying a box of personal items. The next morning brought more casualties. 2 minority interns, bright law students who had been part of the firm's supposed mentorship program, were called into HR before their shifts even began. Marcus accessed the security feed from the HR conference room, watching as Patricia Morrison delivered the news with practiced corporate sympathy. "Unfortunately, we've had some serious concerns about your performance," she said, sliding termination papers across the table. "We don't feel you're meeting the firm's standards." The interns, Isaiah and Maria, sat in shocked silence. Neither had received any negative feedback before this moment. Neither had been given any real work to evaluate. "But we haven't even had our first performance review," Maria protested. "How can we have performance issues?" "The decision is final," Patricia replied, her tone leaving no room for discussion. "Please clean out your desks and return your badges to security." Marcus knew the truth. These terminations were preventive measures, attempts to eliminate potential witnesses before any larger investigation could begin. The firm was trying to clean house, to remove anyone who might substantiate claims of discrimination. Later that night, in the quiet of his supply closet office, Marcus carefully organized the day's evidence. He created 2 new folders in his case files. The first contained all documentation related to the intern's sudden termination, their spotless preliminary reviews, the lack of any documented issues, and the video of their dismissal. The second folder held everything about Ava's situation, the surveillance footage, her email access logs, and the recording of her final confrontation with Langston Jr. As he sealed these folders, Marcus pulled up the firm's website on his laptop. The homepage featured a prominent countdown timer, decorated with champagne glasses and elegant script. 6 days until our annual Partners Gala, celebrating excellence in law. "Let the cleansing begin," he muttered, closing his laptop. The supply closet felt smaller than usual as Marcus sat surrounded by the weight of his collected evidence. The steady hum of the building's night ventilation system was the only sound as he considered the devastation already unleashed and the greater storm to come. The faces of Isaiah, Maria, and Ava floated in his mind, casualties in a war they didn't even know they were fighting. But their sacrifices would serve a greater purpose. Their stories would help bring down the corrupt system that had used and discarded them. The Tuesday night air conditioning hummed through the empty hallways of Gray, Langston, and Moore LLP as Marcus waited in the supply closet. His watch showed 11:45 p.m., the perfect time for what needed to be done. Most of the cleaning staff had finished their shifts, and security was doing their regular perimeter check of the building's exterior. A soft knock on the door made Marcus look up from his laptop. Cesar's weathered face appeared in the doorway, his usual warm smile replaced by a look of determination. "Ready?" Cesar asked, adjusting his maintenance uniform. "I've got the water main access code." Marcus nodded, gathering his tools. "How long can you give me?" 20 minutes. Maybe 30 if I really sell it." Cesar checked his phone. "Security's outside. Now's our window." They moved through the dim corridors with practiced efficiency. Cesar had worked these halls for over 2 decades. He knew every blind spot, every camera angle. They reached the IT archives room, a reinforced door with a keycard reader glowing red in the darkness. "Remember," Cesar said, pulling out his maintenance override key, "when the alarm goes off, everyone will head to the West Wing. That's where I'll report the burst pipe." Marcus squeezed the older man's shoulder. "Thank you, Cesar, for everything." "Just make it count, hermano." Cesar gave him a knowing look before heading toward the water main controls. 5 minutes later, chaos erupted. Emergency lights started flashing as alarms blared through the building. Security radios crackled with reports of flooding in the West Wing. Marcus heard running footsteps and urgent voices moving away from his position. He worked quickly, using the electronic bypass tool he'd prepared. The archive room's lock clicked open. Inside, rows of servers hummed in the climate-controlled space. Marcus found the backup storage unit and connected his specialized drive. His fingers flew over the keyboard as he accessed the firm's archived data. Years of internal communications, supposedly deleted and forgotten, began flowing onto his drive. Chat logs, emails, memos, all the digital breadcrumbs of systemic discrimination and corruption. A particular folder caught his attention. Personnel Transitions 2021 to 2023. Inside, he found a goldmine of damning evidence. Messages between Langston Jr. and other partners detailed their strategy for quietly pushing out black employees. "We need to maintain the firm's traditional tone," one partner wrote, "but it has to be gradual. No obvious patterns." Langston Jr.'s response made Marcus's blood boil. "Agreed. We can phase them out during performance reviews, cite cultural fit issues. HR knows the drill." Another folder labeled Risk Management contained something even darker. Legal memos discussing sexual misconduct allegations from former interns. The partners had deliberately buried the complaints. "Settlement costs plus NDAs less than reputational damage," read one memo. "Recommend no formal reporting." Marcus recognized one name, Sarah Chen, a promising law student who had suddenly resigned 2 months ago. The truth behind her departure lay in these buried files: harassment, threats, and finally a forced settlement with an ironclad confidentiality agreement. His hands shook slightly as he compiled everything into a single encrypted folder. He typed a subject line that felt both heavy and satisfying: "Final nail." With a click, the entire package was sent to Ellen Ward's secure email. The whole operation had taken exactly 28 minutes. Marcus disconnected his drive and carefully restored the system to its previous state. He could still hear commotion from the West Wing. Cesar had done his job perfectly. As he slipped out of the archive room and locked it behind him, a soft voice froze him in place. Was it ever real? Ava stood near the elevator, her figure half illuminated by emergency lighting. She looked different now. No power suit, no perfectly styled hair, just a woman who had lost everything she thought she was building. Marcus turned to face her fully. In that moment, he saw what he might have become. Someone so desperate to belong that they'd sacrifice their own people, their own dignity. "You were a mirror, Ava," he said quietly. "I just didn't like what I saw." The truth hung between them in the dim hallway. Ava's eyes showed recognition, then understanding, and finally a deep sadness. She knew now that she had been both betrayer and betrayed, a player in a game she never truly had a chance to win. The emergency lights continued to flash, casting alternating shadows across their faces as they stood in this moment of brutal honesty. The alarms had stopped, but their echo seemed to linger in the charged air between them. Marcus could hear the maintenance team's voices growing closer. Soon, Caesar would give the all clear, and this night would become just another secret in the firm's long history of them. But this secret, unlike the others, would be its last. Ava's voice was barely a whisper when she spoke again. "I thought I could change it from the inside." "No," Marcus replied. "You just became what they wanted you to be." He walked past her toward the stairwell, leaving her alone by the elevator. The weight of the evidence he'd gathered felt lighter now, knowing it would soon bring the whole corrupt system crashing down. The Thursday morning sun cast long shadows across downtown as Marcus approached the weathered brick building. The brass plate beside the door read, "Whitman and Associates, Notary Public since 1962. The location was Ellen's choice, far enough from the firm to avoid suspicious eyes, but professional enough to handle sensitive legal matters. Inside, the office smelled of old paper and coffee. Wood paneling lined the walls, and a collection of carefully maintained antique furniture gave the space a timeless feel. Ellen Ward sat in a high-backed leather chair, her usual stern expression softened by what looked like concern. "Good morning, Marcus," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. A thick manila envelope lay on the desk between them. Marcus took his seat, noting how Ellen's fingers drummed quietly on the envelope, a rare show of nervousness from the usually unshakable attorney. "Is everything prepared?" Ellen nodded, opening the envelope with deliberate care. She spread the documents across the desk in a precise arrangement. "Every piece of evidence has been authenticated and logged. The timeline is airtight." They began reviewing the materials methodically. Video logs showed partner meetings where racial slurs were casually tossed around. Email chains revealed systematic discrimination in hiring and promotion practices. HR documents exposed the pattern of forcing out minority employees through manufactured performance reviews. "This section here," Ellen said, pointing to a particularly damning email thread, "shows clear intent to maintain what they call traditional firm culture. The language matches almost exactly with discrimination cases I've handled before." Marcus leaned forward, studying the timeline she'd constructed. "And the partner termination notices?" "Already prepared." Ellen pulled out another stack of documents. "They'll be served simultaneously at the gala. The public announcement is scheduled to hit major legal news outlets 5 minutes after the presentation ends." They spent the next hour going over Clause 9B's specific requirements. Franklin Ellison had crafted it carefully. The air clause could only be activated during a formal board presentation, with at least 15 witnesses present. The evidence had to be comprehensive, the discrimination systematic and provable. "The gala provides the perfect setting," Ellen explained. "All partners present, major clients in attendance, press already on site for the firm's annual announcements." Marcus nodded, remembering the countless nights he'd spent gathering proof, building his case piece by piece. "And the ownership transfer?" Ellen pulled out a blue folder. "That's what these are for." She opened it to reveal a series of legal documents, each marked with yellow tabs indicating signature lines. Once you present the evidence and invoke Clause 9B, your father's dormant ownership stake automatically converts to controlling interest. The firm becomes yours. She paused, fixing Marcus with an intense stare. But you need to understand something, Marcus. Once you pull the trigger, there's no going back. You'll own the firm, but you'll own its enemies too. The weight of her words hung in the air between them. Marcus thought about his father, about all the people who'd been hurt by the firm's toxic culture. He reached for the affidavit that would set everything in motion. "I understand," he said, his voice steady as he signed his name. The document would activate Clause 9B at precisely 9:30 p.m. tomorrow night, just as the gala reached its peak. Ellen watched him sign, then carefully added her notary seal. "Your father would be proud," she said quietly. "He always believed you'd be the one to finish what he couldn't." Marcus touched the signature, now dry on the page. He should have fought harder when he had the chance. "He fought in his own way," Ellen replied, gathering the documents. This clause, it was his insurance policy. He knew someday someone would need to clean house. He made sure that someone would have the power to do it right. They spent another hour double-checking every detail. The evidence was organized chronologically, with clear references and timestamps. The presentation was loaded onto 3 separate devices as backup. Every legal requirement had been met and documented. As they finished, Ellen handed Marcus a small card. "These are private security contacts, former federal agents. They'll be in place tomorrow night, disguised as catering staff, just in case things get ugly." Marcus pocketed the card, though he doubted he'd need it. The partners were too proud, too convinced of their own untouchability to imagine physical retaliation. Their revenge would come later, through legal channels and business connections. They left the notary's office separately, Ellen first, then Marcus 15 minutes later. The morning had grown warm, the sidewalks filling with office workers heading to lunch. Marcus checked his phone, no messages from the firm. Everything appeared normal. He took a circuitous route back to Gray, Langston, and Moore, watching for any signs of surveillance. The building looked the same as always, gleaming glass and steel reaching toward the sky, the firm's name displayed prominently near the top. Just as he was about to enter through the service entrance, his phone buzzed. A text from Caesar appeared. "They're planning to fire you tomorrow morning. HR found out about your badge access times." Marcus smiled as he read the message. "Perfect timing," he typed back. He pocketed his phone and swiped his badge one last time. The light turned green, granting him access to what would soon be a very different firm. Tomorrow morning's attempted firing would come too late. By then, everything would have changed. As he walked toward the janitor's closet, Marcus caught his reflection in a window. He was still wearing his maintenance uniform, still playing the role of the invisible man. But beneath that disguise was something the partners never expected: their reckoning. The partners' gala sparkled with pretense and power. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across the downtown ballroom's polished marble floors, while waiters in crisp black uniforms weaved through clusters of Minneapolis's legal elite, their silver trays laden with champagne flutes. The air hummed with practiced laughter and calculated conversation. Senior partners stood in tight circles, their tuxedos perfectly pressed, their wives draped in designer gowns and family diamonds. Junior associates hovered at the edges, eager to be noticed but careful not to intrude. At the center of it all, Trevor Langston Jr. held court near the stage, his bow tie slightly askew from too many celebratory drinks. He gestured broadly as he spoke to a group of important clients, his voice carrying across the room. This firm isn't just about law, it's about legacy. Behind him, a massive screen cycled through carefully curated photos. Partners shaking hands with governors, charity golf tournaments, staged diversity photo ops with carefully selected minority interns. Each image was accompanied by captions touting the firm's achievements and values. Ellen Ward stood near the back, watching it all with quiet intensity. She checked her watch for the third time in 10 minutes, then nodded almost imperceptibly to a man in catering uniform, one of the security personnel she'd arranged. The evening's formal program began right on schedule. Partners took turns at the podium, each speech more self-congratulatory than the last. They spoke of record profits, expanding influence, and the importance of maintaining standards. The crowd applauded politely at all the right moments. When Langston Jr. finally took the stage, his champagne glass still in hand, the room grew quieter. As the heir apparent to the firm's leadership, his words carried special weight. He smiled broadly, basking in the attention. "My father always told me," he began, swaying slightly, "that this firm was built on—" The screen behind him flickered once, twice, then went black. Langston Jr. turned, confused, as the display suddenly came back to life, but now showing something entirely different. The first clip was from the executive boardroom. The senior partners were laughing, passing around bourbon after hours. "Did you see that black paralegal trying to act white in court today?" One of them sneered, "Like putting lipstick on a pig." More footage followed rapidly. Langston Jr. in his office, leering at Ava. "Those hips of yours are the real resume, sweetheart. Keep wearing those tight skirts." Email threads appeared, showing partners mocking a disabled client. "Wheel her chair right out of here if she won't settle. What's she gonna do? Roll after us?" The evidence mounted. Surveillance footage of partner meetings where they planned to systematically eliminate minority employees. Screenshots of manipulated performance reviews. Audio recordings of sexual harassment, racist jokes, casual cruelty. The ballroom erupted in chaos. Women gasped. Clients stood up, faces reddening with anger. Junior associates backed away from their mentors as if distance could provide deniability. Langston Jr. stumbled backward, dropping his glass. It shattered on the stage, the sound sharp against the growing murmurs of shock and outrage. "Turn it off!" he shouted. "Someone turn that damn thing off!" But the display continued, relentless in its exposure of the firm's toxic culture. And then, from the side entrance, a figure emerged. Marcus Ellison, no longer in janitor's clothes, but wearing an impeccably tailored black suit. He walked purposefully toward the stage, each step measured and confident. The room fell silent as he took the microphone from Langston's slack grip. Marcus's voice filled the space, clear and strong. "Good evening. I'm Marcus Ellison, son of Franklin Ellison, the man you erased from your firm's history, the co-founder you forced into silence." He paused, letting his words sink in. Several of the older partners had gone pale, recognition dawning in their eyes. Effective immediately, under Clause 9B of the firm's founding documents, all current equity partners are terminated for cause due to systematic discrimination and misconduct. Security personnel moved smoothly through the crowd, positioning themselves near each partner. They were professionals, former federal agents Ellen had carefully selected and briefed. One by one, they began escorting the protesting partners toward the exits. "This is outrageous!" Langston Sr. bellowed, his face purple with rage. "You can't do this!" "Actually," Marcus replied calmly, "I can. And I have. The evidence has been verified by multiple independent parties. The press has copies. The Bar Association has been notified. It's over." Reporters who had been invited to cover the gala were now frantically taking photos, their camera flashes creating a strobe effect across the chaos. Some clients were already on their phones, presumably calling their own lawyers. Ava pushed through the crowd, her expensive dress wrinkled, her carefully styled hair coming loose. "Marcus, please, I didn't know." He cut her off with a sharp gesture. "You helped build the cage," he said, his voice cold. "You don't get to cry when you're inside it." She recoiled as if slapped, then turned and fled toward the exit, her heels clicking rapidly against the marble floor. The security team continued their work efficiently, removing partner after partner despite protests and threats. Some went quietly, already calculating their legal options. Others had to be firmly guided out, their indignant shouts echoing through the ballroom. Marcus remained on stage, watching it all unfold. The screen behind him now showed a simple document, Clause 9B, with Franklin Ellison's signature clearly visible at the bottom, a reminder of the legal foundation for this night's reckoning. From her corner of the room, Ellen gave Marcus a small nod. Everything had gone according to plan. The firm's power structure was being dismantled in real time, exactly as Franklin had hoped might one day happen. Marcus gripped the podium tightly, his expression resolute as he watched the last partner being escorted out. The cameras continued to flash, capturing this historic moment in Minneapolis legal history. Under his breath, barely audible even to himself, he whispered, "Dad, this one was for you." The Minneapolis morning light streamed through the newly installed glass doors of the downtown law office building. The lobby buzzed with activity as construction workers carefully removed old marble panels and outdated fixtures. The space was being transformed from its formerly austere, traditional aesthetic into something more modern and welcoming. Marcus Ellison walked through the organized chaos, nodding to the workers as he passed. His new security badge caught the light, the fresh logo clear and bold, Ellison and Ward, LLP. The name change had been officially registered just days ago, marking a clean break from the firm's tainted past. Workers were installing new lighting designed to brighten the previously shadowy corners of the lobby. The dark wood panels that had given the space an exclusive, club-like atmosphere were being replaced with warm-toned materials and clear glass. Every change was deliberate, meant to signal transparency and accessibility. As Marcus crossed to the elevators, he passed a young woman in a hijab being given a tour by HR. She was one of many new hires brought in during the firm's rapid transformation. Behind them, a group of law students from Howard University were being shown to the conference room for second-round interviews. The elevator doors opened onto the main office floor, where the change was even more dramatic. The walls that had once displayed portraits of stern-faced white partners now stood empty, waiting for new artwork that would better reflect the firm's revised values. The few remaining pieces showed diverse legal pioneers and civil rights leaders. In the break room, Marcus paused to chat with Caesar, who was now enrolled in the firm's legal education program. The older man was studying for his paralegal certification between shifts, his maintenance uniform replaced by business casual attire. "How are the classes going?" Marcus asked, pouring them both coffee. Caesar smiled broadly. "Challenging but good. My daughter can't believe her papa is going to be a paralegal. She's talking about law school herself now." Similar scenes played out across the office. Former receptionists attended online courses at their desks during lunch breaks. Mailroom staff participated in legal writing workshops. The hierarchy that had once seemed set in stone was being steadily dismantled. Near the main entrance, contractors were finishing the installation of a new bronze plaque. Its surface gleamed, the words carefully etched, "Integrity is louder than silence." The message served as both memorial and mission statement, acknowledging the past while committing to a different future. Across town, in a small strip mall office park, Ava Richmond sat at a metal desk, methodically placing personal items into a cardboard box. The contrast between her current surroundings and her former corner office was stark. The walls were bare except for a simple nameplate, "Legal Assistant." A small television mounted in the corner played the local news. Marcus appeared on screen, standing at a podium outside the courthouse. He spoke with quiet authority about systemic change and the importance of creating genuine opportunities for overlooked talent. Ava paused in her packing to watch, her expression complex. The reporter mentioned that Trevor Langston Jr. was now under investigation for multiple ethics violations and potential criminal charges. The camera cut to him leaving his lawyer's office, trying to shield his face from photographers. She turned back to her box, carefully wrapping a coffee mug in newspaper. Her designer clothes and expensive accessories were gone, replaced by off-the-rack business wear. The change in her circumstances was complete, and perhaps fitting. Back at Ellison and Ward, Marcus walked the hallways of the executive floor. New faces filled the offices. A former public defender who had graduated top of her class at Morehouse, a Vietnamese immigrant who had worked as a janitor while putting herself through law school, a Native American attorney who had spent years fighting corporate land grabs. The boardroom doors stood open, sunlight spilling across the polished table. The room had been redesigned, the old leather chairs replaced with modern seating. The bourbon cart was gone. In its place stood a digital collaboration station for remote client meetings. Marcus stepped inside, his footsteps quiet on the new carpeting. His eyes were drawn to the portrait that now commanded the main wall. Franklin Ellison sat in his old office chair, his expression warm and knowing. The painting captured something the old firm photos never had: the quiet dignity and intelligence that had always been there, hidden behind forced smiles and careful silence. Walking to the portrait, Marcus raised his hand to touch the frame. The gold surface was cool under his fingers. He studied his father's face, seeing now the subtle strength that had allowed him to endure, to plant seeds that would only bloom after he was gone. Turning to face the window, Marcus looked out over the city skyline. Minneapolis hummed with morning traffic, the streets filled with people starting their days. The view was the same as it had always been, but the perspective had shifted dramatically. "You weren't invisible," he said softly, his words barely disturbing the quiet air. "You were watching." If you enjoyed the story of Marcus, I handpicked this next story. If you enjoyed the story of Marcus, I handpicked this next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.